I know.
Because otherwise you're like sitting behind the table. It's actually a night. Raise your hand if you like that idea.
What?
No, Albuquerque doesn't know how to raise a table.
New Mexico, y'all are great.
I had breakfast at the range yesterday. And it was good. And I've met almost everyone in Albuquerque over the last 2 days.
How's the volume in the back? Do we need to be up? Are we good? Hello, house. Can we get the God? Thank you.
Has anyone tried rumor pizza?
Yes.
It
Yes.
looks great.
It is great. Yeah.
You know, there's actually a little, very not known secret here in Albuquerque, but there's a bakery down in downtown called Golden Crown Panda. Yes, world famous biscuit Cheetos. They send them out all around the world. Been on diners, drive-ins, and dives multiple times. Yeah, some of the best pizza in Albuquerque is at Golden Crown. Hands down.
What about the green chili bread?
The green chili bread.
Green chilies and everything here.
It is.
I have this idea of a bakery crawl right now. Like we all just go wandering down there, a couple thousand, you know.
I'm down.
We put in everything: ice cream, wine.
Yeah. And red chili too.
Well, if you've got something in abundance, use it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys ready to kick this off?
Let's go.
Let's go. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Comic-Con 2025. My name is Buck. I'm one of your hosts. This is my friend Chris Burnett. He is also known as the mayor of downtown Albuquerque because, well, I think he's better than our current mayor. So everybody give him Chris Burnett. I did.
I hate this sound system.
I think it's the monitors. Hang on.
I'm gonna touch something.
Raise your hand, if you can, and if you know that Elijah Wood is a DJ.
Is Elijah Wood DJing tonight?
No.
So I'm gonna start off with a really basic question. What did the three, and any of you guys can jump in, what did you think, the first impression after you read the script for Lord of the Rings?
I found it really transportive. I'll never forget reading it because it was under lock and key. Basically, I had to go to our casting office in Los Angeles, Victoria Burrows, the U.S. casting. I had to go to her office to read it. They weren't sending the script out because it was so secretive. So I went to read Fellowship in an office for 2.5 hours. And I remember it feeling so viscerally real and transportive. And this is no joke. As I was driving home, I felt like there were orcs chasing me. I was so still in the world of the writing that I imagined I was still in it for a bit. Which is a credit to Peter, Fran, and Philippa and the script that they wrote. That is obviously a huge debt to Tolkien, and as we made the movie, I think got closer and closer to the books. But yeah, the reading of it was amazing.
John, what about you? I've just been listening to Elijah and trying to remember so many. The scripts were delivered to my house in a. You can delivered? I had gone through the whole audition process, but at this point, they wanted to know if I was going to accept the role. Like I auditioned, I wanted the part, they offered the part, and then you're like, okay. So they sent the scripts in like a armored box when I set it on the counter in the kitchen, it was like, no, scripts don't need usually. So I opened up, and it had the name Jamboree on it, on the title page, which I would come to look, nobody told me. I guess you have to be smart enough to figure things out in this world sometimes, but that was a a faux title page in case we were in a cafe or something and people saw the script sitting there. They wouldn't know that it was Lord of the Rings. They'd think it was Jamboree or something. So
Jamboree, the first 100 years of the New Zealand Scout movement.
You just need to be the voice for everything. Seriously, you need to be the voice for everything. Sorry.
But then I unwound the string. It was like bound with string. You know, you kind of got to do the figure eight thing. It's just getting to the script was its own. You know, you're a part of something exciting and scary, and you haven't even opened the book. You know, so I opened it up, and the watermark. You know what a watermark is?
Yeah.
Had my name, Sean Astin, large across every single page. That's how, if it got out, they would know. So every page, you know, constantly throughout reading the first pages, I was distracted by my name. I'm like, I'm aware of my name, and also, and every time it sort of surprised me, there was some other layer to it. And so I had, in the audition process, I had gotten the books, and I read like 160 pages of the Fellowship, and it was the Alan Lee illustrated version. So I kept finding myself sort of scanning quickly through the script to see where the name Sam appeared, and then looking at the Alan Lee illustrations to orient myself. Like it was almost like I couldn't go into the world of the movie with the script. It was almost like an impediment in a weird way. I was so aware. I mean, you know, if you read, we were doing this for our whole lives.
Mine wasn't watermarked, so maybe that's why.
That's right. Then you get a time limit.
I did the time to read the script.
Well, there's these things called slug lines. I think they're slug lines or whatever. Interior, Hobbit, you know, Hobbiton, Hobbit hole, dead, interior, you know, whatever. And those lines are movie descriptors. And at every set, instead of like, ooh, it's Lothlorien, or ooh, it's Mount Doom, or ooh, it's whatever, I would be like, interior, I would focus on, I was distracted. The script itself was distracting to me.
Listen, in fairness, the medium of screenplay is not, it's not designed to be inherently immersive, right? It is filled
Sometimes
with,
it can be.
It can be, but it's filled with screen direction and articulation of a shot in some cases, which does take you out.
But I think the fact that I was being cast in this trilogy, that we were going to be, you know, I was going to be agreeing to go with my wife and daughter to New Zealand for 2 years. We had just sold our home of 8 years and bought a new home, and we were moving in when it was all just too much. It was all too much. We had to get down to New Zealand for the rehearsal and start actually reading the books, and then we read the scripts with Peter. Didn't we read through them? Yeah,
We did a read through of Fellowship.
a fellowship. But that's when I was able to, you know, that's when I was able to feel it for what it was. And then Peter screened for us in his garage screening room the animatic, or what do you call it? The animatic? No, is that what it's called? So basically, he filmed the storyboards, and in certain places there was actual animation little sequences that were put together, and it was all performed by actors, all the dialogue from the script. It was the script in kind of visual form. And we sat there for how many hours, 7 hours or something, watching it, and that's when I started to understand Peter Jackson's concept of what the movie was. The pacing, you know, it was almost like having a pace car set for me. You know, so yeah, I don't know if that's satisfying or not, but and then every single day we would get script revisions, and for the first couple months at night you would diligently open the brackets, turn the pages, go to the page where the old page was, replace it with the new.
Like salmon.
Yes, yeah, everyone has a new color, yeah. Goldenrod, buff, you know, yeah. And you have this like rainbow script, And you're like, are they changing the word the? Are they changing? Are they really making the? And I honestly, I would have to get to the set and look down at the clothes I was wearing to know where I was.
Mr. Davies, what about you? What did you think when you read the script?
John, you're a literarily trained individual, a classically trained. How did you approach this?
Well, look, I only wanted to go to New Zealand for a month. A nice small part, one of the kings who dies or gets killed or goes mad or something like that, and just a month to visit New Zealand, have a look around, and then come back and have a proper job. Because I was quite certain that this book could never be made into a movie. Tolkien thought that, and I agree with him. And added to which there was a fundamental problem: the size of the people. They do not believe that I am a dwarf, and that I am taller than you two, and that the elf is taller than me, and that human is probably slightly taller than an elf. You haven't got a picture? You remember Darby O'Joe and the Little People?
Yep, Darby O'Gill. Yep.
Many years ago, actually. Your fathers weren't even born when that came out.
No, that's not true.
But there they were, these little people dancing around in the thing. And I thought, this is going to be complete rubbish. And it was really only after they'd shot a little bit of that first scene with you and Ian, you hopping onto the cart, and McKellen and I were sitting together watching this screening, and we both at the same time went, and I said, how the hell did you do that? And he said, I don't know. Once you have that magic, that you make it possible for people to believe that, you knew that you were in with a real chance.
Can you recall if you read the script straight through? I think no.
Oh God, I couldn't even get through the darn books. I had two sons. One came home from boarding school at the age of 12 or 13, locked himself in his room for 5 days, coming down for food, and he read the entire Lord of the Rings. The second one, my son, I thought I would read it to him, and we both would fall asleep before I did it. And it really took about 4 or 5 readings of the book for me suddenly to click into what Tolkien was trying to do, and I realized that the structure is not a dramatic structure, it's the structure of Nordic sagas. And once you get that, then you get the second problem. How the heck do you make a film out of a structure that is not dramatic and it is Nordic sagas? And that's when I really went back to the script and realized the genius of the writing of that. They had managed to turn something that was unfilmable and unscriptable into one of the great screenplays that I'd ever read.
When Peter would describe why certain sequences weren't in there, like Tom Bombadil, or how they thought what was driving the plot at a certain point. That's when he made it clear to me that what the choices were. Reading the script on its own before, absent hearing his description of how they approached what they were doing, I couldn't track it. So I think that's It's and you read it, and I just can't imagine that. I never went into the world in the way you described you went in when you read the script until after principal photography. In the sense of, when you're reading a book and it's coming to the last pages and you don't want it to end. That aching feeling, I don't want this to end, you're in it. And I was looking at it like an archaeologist. I say it advisedly to my friend. But I was looking through the book.
Digging in the wrong place.
It wasn't until the what was the workshop, the games workshop, the arms workshop, something like that. Games Well, I got a box sent to us at the house in Los Angeles after principal photography, and I opened the box up and I took out they were made in pewter, and I took out the little pewter Samwise Gamgee figurine that the artist had spent 6 weeks with dental tools sculpting my face from dozens of pictures that he had for all of us, but for me. And I looked at it and I felt like Aldous Huxley or something like that. I felt myself go into the little creature and I felt myself come out. And I was like, oh my God. It was like dropping acid or something like that. Because when we're on the stage, we go in the regular size set of Brie or Hobbiton. And then Ian goes into the small scale size thing. So he gets to bump his head and feel like a giant, but we just feel like we're in a normal set. So I never got to go until that moment. And then I was like, I really can't wait to see the movie.
Prancing Pony to a degree.
Yeah.
There's some skills.
Everything I say is only partially true once in a while. Sometimes when I remember it semi-accurately, I mean, I'm sure there were a million things, but I just have those distinct recollections. Like, I read the books 3 times, top to bottom. When we went to Queenstown, I had so much time off while we were there that I sat at that apartment building with the indoor pool, and the kids just played in the pool. And I read, and it was right at the foot of those incredible mountains, and I read the whole thing, but I never went into it. Yeah. Until the tour.
So you guys were in New Zealand, especially for Fellowship of the Rings, for just months at a time. What was it like being on set with everybody? And I mean, I've heard that you guys all have tattoos. Like, where are your tattoos? And then, did you guys just become this family there while you were there for all those months?
You mean years?
Years. Well, I meant especially like Fellowship, because they weren't all together in that.
They were children at the same time, but principal photography was 16 months. And then we went back every year for about a month to 2 months for each film. So,
Or 5 months. With pickup shots, normally on a film, pickup shots a week perhaps, maybe 2, with 1 second unit or something like that. We sometimes had 5 second units there for 5 months doing the extra stuff that weren't necessarily involved.
yes.
It was a monumental film. It was one of the really great scale pictures that we would ever be in.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah, they don't make them like that.
No,
Quite literally.
They
It's
just-
not on film.
Yeah, but they can.
But it was in the vanguard of all of the Harry Potter movies and all of the Avenger, the Marvel universe and stuff like that.
Marvel dog.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. But it's people are like, oh, how long were you down there? And now that you see these other franchises and how they think, 15 films into their world, they've got a constant rotation with their wardrobe departments and all these kinds of things. But when we did it, it was new. It was new. They were figuring out. It was like pioneering. And in a way, it's kind of gotten formulaic a little bit. I think.
It's also a special circumstance. I mean, we were it wasn't designed to carry on. You know, it's a finite story. It's 3 books. They were adapting 3 books. There was no sense of what's the franchise going to be after this, beyond potentially The Hobbit and so on and so forth. So that in and of itself is just it's a closed loop. You know what I mean? And yes, it had never been done at that scale. The notion of doing 3 movies simultaneously was really unique. That had never been done. But saying all of that, it also felt like, and we've said this many times over the years, it felt like the world's largest independent film. The intimacy of it, even though we were dealing with, hundreds of extras on a field for battles, the intimacy of it in New Zealand, far away from the rest of the world, was extraordinary. We were also like knocking on farmers' doors to ask if we can use their land for a pickup shot because the helicopter can't get us up to the top of the mountain that day. That happens. Like, that's a really special thing that I don't think that is even replicable. I think the scale to which something is done now, even on The Hobbit, was a much larger thing. It's like 2,000 to 3,000 people in all that worked on Lord of the Rings in varying, incredibly important jobs across that spread. It was still in like Miramar, Wellington. Like that was the home base. It was a big extended family, and you could go to Weta Digital and like hang out with those people. It was all this kind of cottage industry that was created in a very small town.
With a level of enthusiasm and a willingness to try and become the very best expert on this thing that you could possibly do. It was the most, I've never been on a set that had such focused and intense and dedicated and enthusiastic and passionate crew and construction and transportation. I mean, an extraordinary coming together of people who knew somehow that this was a very important film to do. It was marvelous.
Yeah, and everyone in that regard felt like they were a part of the greater whole, which is not always the case. When you work on something on a big scale, especially in a studio system, people tend to stay in their lane and like do their job, and they don't necessarily extend outside of that. In New Zealand, there's this real willingness to sort of put on many hats, whatever it takes to get the job done. And so everyone then feels like they are a part of the thing, rather than just like doing the thing that they were hired to do. And that kind of can-do attitude that sort of I'll chip in and go beyond my station to help permeated the entire atmosphere of the making of the film, where it just felt like we were all in this thing, stuck in it together, in this way that we were also in great reverence to the thing we were making. And that enthusiasm carried on amongst all of us.
And Peter's love of cinema created a kind of framing for the experience. He loved movies. He loved the history of movies. He loved the history of the industry. And so you felt, because of his passion and his interest and his relationship to cinema history, and you think of it in terms of this. If you go to make a movie about some subject or whatever, you don't think necessarily like, what is this project's relationship to film history? He was approaching this like, this is pushing the boundaries of what has ever been achieved before. There's something like the dolly. There's a kind of I don't know if it's mythology is the right word, but they would talk about like, oh, what's the longest dolly track that's ever been made? And I remember when Color Purple was made, they said, oh, the dolly track through the fields, Spielberg laid out the longest dolly track ever. And I remember when we were, to your point about like everybody pitches in, this is one of my favorite little achievements, was the dolly grips had these handles on the back of the dollies. The dollies are basically like a little car, and you could turn the wheel with the left hand, to turn the wheel with the right hand, and you can kind of decide how to move it. But they were only 10 inches wide, the grips. And so they would try and do, like in the Mines of Moria, a running shot where the dolly track was there, and the pillars, you'd be going by the pillars, and the actors were running, and the actors could run way faster than the dolly. And I said, at one point, I had an innovation in this frontier mentality. I said, why don't you guys put a pole across the back of it and attach it, and then you can stand like bobsledders on the side of it and like really get it going in a run. And I remember them looking at me and looking at each other and then doing it. Now we had a shot, and the dolly track they built was like 1,000 times longer than anything that had ever been built before. Yeah, that's awesome.
Let's go out the audience. I'm sure somebody out there has a question. So.
No, Aaron, your questions have been great. Chris, your questions have been great. But let's bring in the fellowship, right? We have 1,000 friends with us today. Well,